Have you ever wondered why some of Japan's most haunting samurai films vanished from history? Behind every sword duel lies a story of censorship, fear, and rebellion. These were not just tales of warriors, but reflections of a country torn between honor and survival. Forgotten by the mainstream, buried by politics, and rediscovered by collectors, these are 12 samurai masterpieces you have never seen. Number 12. The Sword of Doom, 1966. When it first sliced into theaters, The Sword of Doom was seen as too dark, too nihilistic, too cruel for the heroic image of the samurai. Directed by Kihachi Okamoto, it told the story of Ryunosuke Tsukue, a cold and ruthless swordsman who kills for pleasure and slowly descends into madness. There are no heroes in this film, only ghosts of morality and echoes of violence. The cinematography was brutal and elegant, filled with stark contrasts and silence that screamed louder than battle cries. Critics at the time were shaken. Japan's post-war audiences wanted redemption, but The Sword of Doom offered none. It mirrored the chaos of a generation that had lost its honor in the fires of war. Some theaters even pulled it early, fearing it glorified murder. Behind-the-scenes actor Tatsuya Nakadai reportedly fell into depression while portraying Ryunosuke. The role consumed him as Okamoto pushed him into real emotional isolation to mirror his character's madness. Nakadai later called it the most exhausting performance of his life. Today, the film is seen as a masterpiece of psychological samurai cinema. Its unfinished ending still sparks debate. Was Ryunosuke punished or forever trapped in his violent spiral? Either way, The Sword of Doom reminds us that true hell lies within the mind, not on the battlefield. Number 11. Harakiri, 1962. When Masaki Kobayashi released Harakiri, he tore apart the myth of Bushido itself. Critics were stunned. Audiences were angry. The government was nervous. This was not a samurai story that celebrated loyalty. It exposed hypocrisy, corruption, and cruelty hiding behind ritual. The film follows a ronin named Tsugumo Hanshiro, played by the legendary Tatsuya Nakadai, who arrives at a noble house requesting permission to commit seppuku. But as he tells his story, the truth unfolds like a blade, slowly unsheathing. The clan had already driven another young man to suicide using the same ceremony as a tool for humiliation. When it premiered, officials called it unpatriotic. Kobayashi had fought against Japan's military system during World War II, and his anger poured into every frame. Studio executives feared government backlash and forced distributors to tone down marketing that hinted at political critique. Yet, even censored, its impact could not be contained. Behind the scenes, Kobayashi battled producers who wanted a more heroic ending. He refused. He wanted audiences to feel disgusted by false honor. Tatsuya Nakadai's performance was so intense that extras avoided speaking to him between takes. Years later, Harakiri won international acclaim, but in Japan, it remained controversial. Even now, it divides historians. Was it rebellion or tragedy? Perhaps both. It endures as a sword aimed at the heart of blind obedience. Number 10. Kill, 1968. Kihachi Okamoto returned again with Kill, and this time he laughed at the samurai genre he had helped define. On the surface, it looked like a comedy full of absurd duels and cynical characters, but beneath the humor burned a ruthless critique of power and corruption. The film follows a former farmer turned ronin and a wandering samurai caught in a tangled plot of betrayal. Every sword fight feels both ridiculous and tragic. The dialogue is sharp, the tone sarcastic, the moral completely shattered. Okamoto dared to ask what happens when loyalty itself becomes a joke. Japanese censors were not amused. The Ministry of Education considered it anti-nationalist and refused to support screenings. Some theaters banned posters showing samurai drinking and mocking their lords. Newspapers avoided mentioning it altogether. It was the era of student protests, and the film's anti-authority spirit terrified studio bosses. Behind the curtain, Okamoto faced pressure to soften the tone. He secretly re-edited parts at night, adding visual gags and abrupt cuts to hide political commentary in plain sight. Lead actor Tatsuya Nakadai delivered one of his strangest performances, switching from slapstick to sorrow within a single breath. Kill was misunderstood for decades, dismissed as parody. But modern audiences finally see it for what it is, a dark mirror reflecting Japan's moral exhaustion after war. The laughter hides despair, the swordplay hides truth. It remains a cinematic rebellion disguised as farce. Number 9. Samurai Rebellion, 1967. When Samurai Rebellion premiered, it was not greeted with applause, but silence. Audiences were stunned by its quiet fury. Directed by Masaki Kobayashi and starring the legendary Toshiro Mifune, it dared to question the feudal system that Japan's older generation still revered. This was no tale of glory, but of defiance and heartbreak. The story follows a loyal retainer who risks everything to protect his family from a corrupt lord. His rebellion begins not with rage, but with love. Love for his son and daughter-in-law who refuse to surrender to tyranny. Every frame is drenched in restraint and pain. There are no triumphant duels, only the tragedy of honor devoured by politics. When it released, government officials called it dangerous propaganda. The film's portrayal of rebellion against authority was too raw for an era still nursing post-war obedience. Kobayashi had already earned a reputation as a dissident with Harakiri, and studios quietly warned him to stop making anti-establishment films. Some theaters refused to show it. Others cut scenes of brutality to avoid controversy. Behind the camera, Mifune clashed with censors over his performance. He insisted on portraying his character as weary and human, not heroic. It went against every samurai stereotype and nearly cost him his reputation among traditionalists. Decades later, critics recognized Samurai Rebellion as one of the greatest tragedies in Japanese cinema. Its quiet ending, where duty meets love, remains unforgettable. It taught that true rebellion does not roar. It bleeds in silence. Number 8. 3. Outlaw Samurai, 1964. Before Kurosawa's Seven Samurai became legend, there was Hideo Gosha's Three Outlaw Samurai, a fierce raw film that tore through the genre with dirt under its nails and rebellion in its soul. It was Gosha's debut, and it felt like a slap to the polished face of traditional cinema. The story begins with three wandering ronin who stumble into a peasant uprising. The farmers are starving the lords corrupt, and justice a myth. Instead of noble warriors, the film gives us cynical drifters who fight not for honor, but for survival. Each duel feels improvised, chaotic, desperate. Gosha filmed it like a knife fight, unpredictable and fast. Censors were uneasy. The depiction of peasants revolting against the ruling class was considered inflammatory. Government boards demanded Gosha change dialogue that implied sympathy for rebellion. He refused. Studio executives threatened to shut down the shoot until he delivered a version with less peasant focus. Behind the scenes, production was chaotic. The crew had to reuse costumes and film in abandoned rural sites to save money. Actors trained in real mud and freezing rain to capture authenticity. Gosha demanded realism over beauty. When it released, critics called it too violent and morally ambiguous. Yet over time, Three Outlaw Samurai gained cult status. Modern historians see it as the film that brought street grit into the samurai world. It showed the death of idealism and the birth of realism, a revolution hidden behind a blade. Number 7. The Hidden Fortress, 1958. Before George Lucas dreamed of Jedi Knights, Akira Kurosawa crafted The Hidden Fortress, a film that turned feudal chaos into cinematic poetry. It was a commercial hit, but few today remember how radical it was for its time. Kurosawa took the viewpoint away from noble warriors and gave it to the lowest of the low, two greedy peasants bumbling through war. The story follows their accidental alliance with a disguised princess and a stoic general as they attempt to transport royal gold through enemy territory. The tone shifts between humor and tension, creating one of the first true adventure epics of Japan's golden age. Yet not all praised it. Some critics accused Kurosawa of mocking the samurai code by making heroes out of fools. Conservative reviewers called it disrespectful to the emperor's legacy. The government disliked how it portrayed soldiers as blind followers. Behind the scenes, the production was one of Toho's largest ever. Kurosawa built vast mountain sets and used revolutionary long-lens cinematography to create an immersive landscape. Toshiro Mifune's intense physical performance as the general became legendary, inspiring generations of action cinema. The Hidden Fortress was rediscovered decades later when George Lucas cited it as the template for Star Wars. The peasants became droids, the princess became Leia, the general became Obi-Wan. Its influence reached galaxies far away, yet its soul remains deeply Japanese, a reminder that even fools can carry the future of honor. Number 6. Twilight Samurai, 2002. When Twilight Samurai arrived, it felt like a ghost from another time. In an era of explosions and spectacle, this quiet film whispered about love, poverty, and the slow decay of the samurai class. Directed by Yoji Yamada, it became a critical success abroad. Yet in Japan, its subtle defiance of tradition sparked discomfort. The story follows Seibei Iguchi, a low-ranking samurai who earns so little that he must care for his daughters and senile mother by himself. He is called Twilight Seibei because he rushes home each evening to tend his family instead of drinking with his peers. When ordered to fight a deadly duel, he faces a choice between survival and duty. Yamada stripped away myth and honor, leaving only exhaustion and sacrifice. There are no heroic battles, only quiet acts of humanity. Yet some critics accuse the film of tarnishing the image of the warrior class. Traditionalists saw Seibei's refusal to embrace glory as cowardice. Others believed Yamada was using the samurai as a metaphor for Japan's own lost moral center. Behind the scenes, Yamada faced studio skepticism. Toho executives doubted audiences would accept such an understated drama. They wanted grandeur and bloodshed. Yamada fought for minimalism, shooting with natural light and long takes. Actor Hiroyuki Sanada trained for months in ancient martial arts to portray swordsmanship that felt clumsy and real. Twilight Samurai won awards worldwide and was even nominated for an Oscar, yet its quiet sorrow divided domestic audiences. It remains one of the last true elegies for the samurai age, an acknowledgement that honor sometimes means choosing peace over pride. It is not about death in battle, but dignity in obscurity. Number 5. Sword of the Beast, 1965. Hideo Gosha returned with Sword of the Beast, a violent and poetic tale that dared to show the samurai not as noble heroes, but as hunted animals. When it premiered, it was met with confusion and discomfort. Critics called it too cynical, too raw, too modern. But Gosha knew exactly what he was doing, stripping away the armor of mythology to expose human greed. The film follows Genosuke, a samurai betrayed by his clan after refusing to follow corrupt orders. He becomes a fugitive forced to survive in the wild, like the beast of the title. Along the way, he meets outcasts and thieves, each revealing a different layer of social decay. The forest becomes both his prison and his redemption. Censors disliked its portrayal of the feudal system as predatory. Scenes depicting bureaucratic corruption were nearly cut. Studio heads demanded rewrites to make Genosuke more heroic, but Gosha refused. He wanted ambiguity, not glory. The film's nihilism echoed Japan's growing distrust of authority during the turbulent 1960s. Behind-the-scenes filming was brutal. Gosha insisted on shooting in remote mountain terrain under freezing conditions. Lead actor Mikijiro Hira performed his own stunts, including real sword clashes that left him injured. The crew endured exhaustion and constant delays, but the result was visceral realism rarely seen in that era. Sword of the Beast was initially ignored, but decades later rediscovered as a masterpiece of anti-samurai cinema. Its jagged editing and moral despair influenced generations of directors, including Takeshi Kitano. The film's final image of a wounded man limping toward an uncertain dawn remains one of Japanese cinema's most haunting metaphors for survival in a corrupted world. Number 4. The Human Condition. Third, A Soldier's Prayer, 1961. Few films ever captured the collapse of moral order like Masaki Kobayashi's The Human Condition trilogy and its final chapter. A Soldier's Prayer stands as one of the most devastating anti-war samurai-era allegories ever made. Although technically a war film, it carries the same spirit as the samurai classics: loyalty, honor, and spiritual death under tyranny. The story follows Kaji, a pacifist, forced into the Japanese army during the final days of World War II. In this final installment, he wanders through a ravaged Manchuria, searching for meaning as his ideals crumble. Every step he takes feels heavier. Every life he encounters reminds him of a code of honor that no longer exists. When it released, Japanese officials were furious. Kobayashi had dared to show soldiers as victims rather than heroes. Some accused him of dishonoring Japan's memory. The military censors tried to limit screenings, claiming it would demoralize veterans. Yet Kobayashi's courage in exposing wartime cruelty turned him into an icon of artistic resistance. Behind the scenes, production stretched over years, draining both budget and cast. Actor Tatsuya Nakadai starved himself to portray Kaji's physical decline. Filming took place in freezing wastelands of Hokkaido, where the cast lived in military tents. Kobayashi pushed everyone to their limits, insisting that true emotion could only emerge from exhaustion. A Soldier's Prayer concluded one of cinema's most ambitious humanist epics. Though rarely screened today, its influence runs deep. It dismantled the romanticized samurai ideal and showed the cost of blind obedience to any system. Kobayashi's vision was not about heroes or villains, but about the fragile line between morality and madness. Number 3. Rashomon, 1950. Rashomon was not just a film, it was a revelation that shattered the way audiences understood truth. When Akira Kurosawa unleashed it in 1950, Japanese studios did not know what to make of it. Too strange, too abstract, too philosophical. Yet it would go on to redefine world cinema forever. The story unfolds after a violent crime in the forest. A samurai is murdered, a woman assaulted, and a bandit captured. But the twist comes when all three tell their version of events, and each contradicts the other. Truth becomes smoke. Honor becomes illusion. No one is innocent, and no one is right. At its core, Rashomon attacked the myth of moral clarity that defined Japanese society. Censors worried it undermined the idea of absolute virtue. Conservative critics accused Kurosawa of westernizing Japanese storytelling by making it ambiguous and cynical. Studio Daiei almost buried the film, fearing it would fail at the box office. Behind the scenes, Kurosawa faced constant battles. Executives demanded a straightforward ending, but he refused. He wanted audiences to leave questioning everything they believed about justice and perception. Toshiro Mifune's wild, unpredictable performance terrified some viewers who were used to stoic samurai heroes. When Rashomon won the Golden Lion at Venice, it shocked Japan. The government quickly changed its tune, calling it a national treasure, even though they had ignored it months earlier. Its legacy was monumental. It became the foundation of the Rashomon effect in psychology and law, the idea that truth is shaped by perspective. The film's message still burns through decades later. Every warrior fights not just an enemy, but his own memory of what happened. Number 2. Seven Samurai, 1954. There are films that define a genre, and then there is Seven Samurai, the storm that created it. Directed by Akira Kurosawa, it was both an epic of courage and an indictment of class division. At its release, it nearly bankrupted its studio and terrified investors. No one had seen anything so vast, so human, so devastating. The plot is deceptively simple. A village hires 7 impoverished samurai to defend them against bandits. What follows is not heroism, but exhaustion, despair, and sacrifice. Each warrior carries his own wound. Each duel feels less like triumph and more like survival. The film stretched over 3 hours, but not a moment felt wasted. Censors were wary of its political undertones. The farmers' uprising against oppression echoed Japan's fragile social climate after the war. Kurosawa clashed with Toho executives who demanded cuts to reduce costs. He refused. He insisted on building real villages and filming in months of rain to capture authenticity. Behind the camera, chaos ruled. Sets flooded. Actors got sick. Kurosawa famously delayed shooting for weeks, waiting for the right clouds. But the agony paid off. When it premiered, audiences were left speechless. Critics called it the greatest Japanese film ever made. Yet Kurosawa himself called it a story of defeat, of good men dying for a world that will forget them. Its legacy birthed countless remakes, including The Magnificent Seven, and inspired filmmakers across the globe. Seven Samurai stands as a monument, not just to courage, but to futility. It whispers one eternal truth: honor may save your soul, but never your life. Number 1. Ran, 1985. Ran was Akira Kurosawa's final masterpiece, a thunderous elegy painted in blood and wind. At 75 years old, Kurosawa crafted it as his farewell to both the samurai and himself. Loosely inspired by Shakespeare's King Lear, it was a film about power madness and betrayal. Yet, when it premiered, it divided Japan as fiercely as any war. The story follows an aging warlord who divides his kingdom among his sons only to watch them tear it apart. The battles are grand, but the heart of the film is decay, the slow collapse of loyalty and sanity. Kurosawa filled every frame with color and silence, using nature itself as an accomplice to tragedy. Japanese studios hesitated to fund it, believing the director had lost touch with younger audiences. Kurosawa had to rely on French financing from producer Serge Silberman to finish it. Some Japanese critics resented this calling, ran a foreign film in disguise. Others accused him of being too pessimistic, too Western, too cruel. Production was legendary. Thousands of extras were trained to march in perfect unison. Costumes were hand-dyed for months. Kurosawa directed through a telescope from a distant hill to maintain symmetry of battle scenes. The result was breathtaking chaos that looked like a painting come alive. When it premiered abroad, Ran was hailed as a masterpiece. In Japan, the reception was cold at first, but over time reverence replaced resentment. It became his final gift, a mirror held up to the nation's violent history. Kurosawa once said he made it not about kings or warriors, but about the curse of ambition. In the end, Ran reminds us that even empires built on honor crumble beneath human pride. These films were not just entertainment, they were confessions from a culture wrestling with its soul. Each blade swing carried history, each silence echoed rebellion. Japan's golden age of samurai cinema left scars that still shine. Which of these forgotten masterpieces haunts you most? Tell us below, and remember, honor the story by liking and subscribing.